Good morning, children. Today we are going to study about the chapter Lost Spring Stories of Stolen Childhood. This is very interesting chapter which discusses grinding poverty, dirt, and exploitation. The chapter focuses upon child labor. The Lost Spring, written by Anis Jung. She is an author, journalist, and columnist. Let me discuss author's profile first. Anis Jung, born in Rourkela in 1944 and brought up in Hyderabad, is an Indian women author, journalist, and a columnist for major newspapers in India and abroad, whose most noted work is Unveiling India, a detailed chronicle of the lives of women in India, noted specially for the detailed depiction of Muslim women behind the purdah. After schooling and college at Osmania University in Hyderabad, she went to the United States for higher studies at University of Michigan, where she did her masters in sociology and American studies. Let me introduce the chapter. First of all, I want to tell you about the chapter that the entire chapter is divided in two stories. The first story is about a character, Sahib Alam, and the another one is about Mukesh. Lost Spring is that the losing childhood, as we all know that in English, seasons describes the emotions. So in the title, Lost Spring, it refers to the losing of childhood, as childhood is known to be the spring of life. And here, writer compares the childhood stays with spring, age of happiness, stays of happiness, enjoyment. So, spring of the life and is the most amazing and loving part of our life, which we always miss. And we always miss our childhood. There is no doubt. Because in this stage only we are carefree and we feel enjoyment in life, we feel refreshed. In the story, narrator has tried to explain the conditions of the poor children which they have end up their childhood early due to poor economic conditions. Anis Jung's Lost Spring Stories of Stolen Childhood focuses on children from deprived backgrounds with dreams in their minds. It includes the story of Sahib Alam and Mukesh. As I earlier told you that there are two major stories. One is about Sahib Alam and the another is about another character, Mukesh. Both are trapped in grinding poverty and a life of exploitation. Though having a dream in his mind, Sahib Alam succumbs to circumstances. He yields to circumstances, give up to circumstances, and is forced to work at a tea stall. Jung is noted for her lively and vivid descriptions, but she rarely provides any solution to the many problems she describes. Children, here is a chapter Lost Spring from your book Flamingo Stories of Stolen Childhood. Let's begin with the introduction of author. Anis Jung, as I told you earlier, was born in Rourkela and spent her childhood and adolescence in Hyderabad. She received her education in Hyderabad and in the United States of America. Her parents were both writers. Anis Jung began her career as a writer in India. She has been an editor and columnist for major newspapers in India and abroad and has authored several books. The following is a part excerpt from the book titled Low Spring Stories of Stolen Childhood. Here she analyzes the grinding poverty and traditions which condemn these children to a life of exploitation. Let's begin with the very first story. Title is Sometimes I Find a Rupee in the Garbage. Let's begin. Why do you do this? I ask Sahib, whom I encounter every morning scrounging for gold, searching for gold in the garbage dumps of my neighborhood. Sahib left his home long ago. Set amid us the green fields of Dhaka, his home is not even a distant memory. There were many storms that swept away their fields and homes. His mother tells him that is why they left looking for gold in the big city where he now lives. I have nothing else to do, he mutters, looking away. Sahib says this interaction is taking place between author and Sahib. See, Sahib says, I have nothing else to do, he mutters, looking away. And see the author, what does she say? She says, go to school, I say glibly, realizing immediately how hollow the advice must sound. There is no school in my neighborhood. Boy says, there is no school in my neighborhood. When they build one, I will go to school. So this is the reply of Sahib to author. If I start a school, will you come? I ask, half joking. And the boy replies, yes, he says, smiling broadly. A few days later, I see him running up to me. Is your school ready? See, the child asked question to writer. Is your school ready? It takes longer to build a school, I say. An author replied to him. It takes longer to build a school, I say, embarrassed at having made a promise that was not meant. But promises like mine abound in every corner of his bleak world. After months of knowing him, I asked him his name, and he replied, Sahib-e-Alam, he announces. See, he announces his name, Sahib-e-Alam. He does not know what it means. If he knew its meaning, Lord of the universe. What was the meaning of that word? Lord of the universe. He would have a hard time believing it, unaware of what his name represents. He roams the streets with his friends, an army of barefoot boys who appears like the morning birds and disappear at noon. Over the months, I have come to recognize each of them. Why are not you wearing chappals? I ask one. My mother didn't bring them down from the shelf. He answers simply. Even if she did, he will throw them off. Adds another, who is wearing shoes that do not match. Means unmatched shoes he was wearing, another child was wearing. When I comment on it, he shuffles his feet and says nothing. I want shoes, says a third boy, who has never owned a pair all his life. Traveling across the country, I have seen children walking barefoot. Writer is here narrating her observation throughout the nation. She says, I have seen children walking barefoot in cities, on village roads, everywhere. That shows grinding poverty in our nation. It is not lack of money, but a tradition to stay barefoot is one explanation. One explanation can be that. I wonder if this is only an excuse to explain away a perpetual state of poverty. an extreme state of poverty. I remember a story a man from Udupi once told me. As a young boy, he would go to school past an old temple where his father was a priest. See, here a story has been narrated by by an author. She's saying that once she met some boy. Remember, a story of a man from Udupi once told me. The story was told to her by a man. As a young boy, what he used to do about that man. The story is about that man. As a young boy, he would go to school past an old temple where his father was a priest. His father was priest there, and he used to go to that temple. He would stop briefly at the temple and pray for a pair of shoes. He used to ask for shoes. That shows again the poverty. And see, the child demands from God to have a pair of shoes. 30 years later, I visited his town and the temple, which was now drowned in an air of desolation. In the backyard where lived the new priest, and now some other new priest was there, there were red and white plastic chairs. A young boy dressed in a grey uniform, wearing socks and shoes, arrived, panting, and threw his school bag on a folding bed. Looking at the boy, I remembered the prayer another boy had made to the goddess when he had finally got a pair of shoes. So he tries to remember that some other boy who got the pair of shoes. Let me never lose them. The goddess had granted his prayer. Young boys like the son of the priest now wore shoes, but many others, like the rag pickers in my neighborhood, remained shoeless. My acquaintance with the barefoot rag pickers leads me to Simapuri. Simapuri is situated at periphery of Delhi, and it is a slum area where thousands of rag pickers live a life of poverty. See, my acquaintance with the barefoot rag pickers leads me to Simapuri, a place on the periphery of Delhi. Yet miles away from it, metaphorically. Though in a Delhi, but miles away from it. Those who live here are squatters who came from Bangladesh back in 1971. Sahibs' families among them. Simapuri was then a wilderness. It still is, but it is no longer empty. In structures of mud, with roofs of tin and tarpaulin, devoid of sewage, drainage, or running water, live 10,000 rag pickers. They have lived here for more than 30 years without an identity, without permits, but with ration cards that get their names on waters list and enable them to buy grain. Food is more important for survival than an identity. If at the end of the day we can feed our families and go to bed without an aching stomach, we would rather live here than in the fields that gave us no grain. This is the pain of the people who were living there in Simapuri. See, a group of women in tattered saris, when I asked them why they left their beautiful land of green fields and rivers. This question was asked by the author to the women of that Simapuri, that why they have left their green fields, or why they have left their beautiful land of green fields and rivers. Then they replied that if at the end of the day we can feed our families and go to bed without an aching stomach, or without empty stomach, we would rather live here than in the fields that gave us no grain. So it's better to live here because that fields were not giving grain to them, and the food is very very important. When I asked them why they left their beautiful land of green fields and rivers, wherever they find food, they pitch their tents that become transit homes. Children grow up in them, becoming partners in survival. And survival in Simapuri means rag picking. So, rag picking was the means of survival in Simapuri. Through the years, it has acquired the proportions of a fine art. Now it has become an art, a fine art. Garbage to them is gold. See, garbage for them is a gold. It is very precious to them. It is the meaning of survival. It is their daily bread. They are able to, manage food for their families, a roof over their heads, even if it is a leaking roof, but for a child, it is even more. I sometimes find a rupee, even a 10 rupees note, Sahib says, his eyes lightening up when you can find a silver coin in a heap of garbage. You don't stop scrounging, you don't stop searching, for there is a hope of finding more. See, for children, it is like a game. They enjoy it. It seems that for children, garbage has a meaning different from what it means to their parents. See here, the for garbage has different meaning actually for both of them, like for parents and for children. For the children, it is wrapped in wonder. It is a kind of surprise. Every day they wait what surprise they may get. And for the elders, it is a means of survival, because they, through the garbage selling, they only earn money and they manage to feed their families. So it has different meaning for both of them, for parents and for children, for elder one and for children. One winter morning, I see Sahib standing by the fenced gate of the neighborhood club, watching two young men dressed in white playing tennis. I like the game, he hums, content to watch it standing behind the fence. I go inside when no one is around. He admits the rag picker let me use the swing. Sahib too is wearing tennis shoes that look strange over his discolored shirt and shorts. Someone gave them to me, he says, in the manner of an explanation, because those shoes were not of him, and he explained to writer that those were given to him by someone. The fact that they are discarded shoes of some rich boy who perhaps refused to wear them because there was a hole in one of them, and doesn't bother him. That hole was not bothering to Sahib, and he was liking those shoes. For one who has walked barefoot, even shoes with a hole is a dream come true, because he was not having shoes earlier, and now he was having shoes, and it was like a dream come true. With a hole is a, though the shoes were with the hole, but it was like a dream come true. But the game he is watching so intently is out of his reach. What game he was watching? He was watching tennis game, but that was not in his approach. It was not in his reach. Why? Because he was a mere rag picker. This morning Sahib is on his way to the milk booth. In his hand is a steel canister. I now work in a tea stall down the road, he says. Sahib says this to writer that I now work in a tea stall down the road. He points towards that, pointing in the distance. I am paid 800 rupees and all my meals. Does he like the job? I ask. His face, I see, has lost the carefree look. The steel canister seems heavier than the plastic bag he would carry so lightly over his shoulders. The bag was his. The canister belongs to the man who owns the tea shop. Sahib is no longer his own master.